Hello there. Hello over there.
We're broadcasting a little different this morning to practice what we preach, social distancing, putting more space between you and people, just in general, even if it's in your home. Even if you're quarantining, staying, pretty distant from the people that you're around just to make sure that everybody stays healthy. Because a big thing that I was talking to when I asked a couple doctors about, testing and people not testing positive per se, doesn't mean that you're not going to get sick in a week. Your symptoms could just not be flaring up yet. So
that's really kind of the frightening thing that we're all aware of now, is that you just don't know. It's such an unknown about the length of time it takes, who's carrying, who's not, the effect it has on your coworkers, your family, and people you come in contact with.
Well, the thing is, I mean, if you think it's weird now, give it another, I'd say, 7 or 8 days, when I think that we're going to get a good idea of just the volume once we get more tests out there, because we know they say the lawmakers saying they're going to get more tests out in the next few days. Once we get some better numbers about the tests and just how many people actually have it, and the symptoms start to show themselves, because we also know there's an incubation period.
Right.
I think this next weekend could be bad for
Here's an interesting thing. You guys may know the answer, probably do the answer. Is these tests are taken all over the United States, several within our area. Where do they actually go?
They go to a state or a national health lab.
Yeah, and there's we should say there's some private ones, like LabCorp actually has in Burlington, I think.
That's a lot of tests at one time. And it's a lot, the volume of tests, and then keeping up with each individual, that's a task that you hope that they handle well.
I looked at, there was a map that showed how many local and state health labs we had before the coronavirus, and then it, increasing, showing we have, thousands that have now opened up. Supposedly now at the beginning of this week, the federal officials have said that we're entering a new phase, and so that we're going to get a couple thousand more labs opening, which I would then in return hope for more tests and more sites, things to be able to get that test done.
The thing is, I mean, and the testing is a good thing, because once you can map out where this is, you can help mitigate it and
But if it's everywhere.
But I don't want to say it's too late, because it's never going to be too late. But I mean, it's kind of late as far as like the people who have this were out this weekend spreading it.
But the thing is, even if you don't...
We all saw those pictures on social media.
I could not believe it.
And it made me cringe.
It
was people out in large groups at restaurants and
very close proximity.
And partying, and I think we all collectively cringed when we saw it, because we're like, you know what? I hope everybody's okay, but I'm scared we're going to look back this past weekend and some of those pictures.
That was their choice. Now, what the other choice was, those crowded airports, those people coming back from Europe, they had to do that, and they were even closer to each other.
Well, I will bring up the point of you can still test negative but have the virus. So if, I feel like the majority of people that I've been asking on social media, are you sick? Do you feel sick? Or do you know somebody that's sick? You might be contagious, but if you do go to get tested, you're negative. So we would still have that problem if everybody is testing. And, we're like, okay, we know that just these 10 right here in that community tested positive. Well, everybody else that tested negative shouldn't walk away with the, that I'm good then.
With a false sense of not accomplishment, but a false sense of security.
Security.
Yeah. And if you looked at the numbers out of Italy this past weekend, I mean, and they were 10 to 14 days ahead of us as far as the whole thing. It's devastating. 360 deaths in one day.
They showed a newspaper that said the newspaper only had normally 2 pages of obituaries. It was 15 pages of obituaries in that newspaper from just a couple days ago.
And you compare that to, say, South Korea, which did a much better job of aggressively tackling this, and they've seen their numbers sort of level off a little bit. I saw a fascinating clip from Rachel Maddow's show on Friday night. She had the health and medical writer from the New York Times in studio, and she was interviewing him. And this is the guy where all of our information that we get, our stuff from, a lot of it comes from his reporting, because he's like the go-to guy at the Times. And he was saying, if you think what we're doing or even talking about is quarantining, he's like, we don't really even understand. When he was talking about like how they handled it in Wuhan and in China, and he said, this isn't a thing of where you go quarantine in your house with your family members. Right. They found out in China that 75 to 80% of the transmissions was happening among family members. And so if you get a fever or you think you have a fever, you have to go to one of these fever clinics. It's not even like your own personal doctor you go to. A fever clinic, you drive up, they're all in their like hazmat suits, you know, and they test you. From that point on, you don't get to go back to your family. Like you are isolated socially,
right?
Like, completely.
From that moment.
From that moment on, and then
yeah, we saw pictures
you are for 2 weeks, and that's how they are getting their numbers down. It's extreme quarantine. It's not like, oh, I'm going to hang out at home with you know my friends and family and treat it as a snow day. It's like, no, these people are actually medically isolated.
Well, it'll be interesting to see when we're the same amount of time like passed from having our first case, what the numbers, you know, compared to in China and how many people they ended up having pass away from the virus and still dealing with. I saw a picture of a nurse that hadn't seen her kids in months that was over there, so because of the quarantining. But this kind of brought up our conversation. The poll that we decided to have on our app this morning was asking if people think that all the bars and restaurants in Charlotte, and I really am thinking more the entire state should be closed, because we'll show you right here, Washington, Ohio. I was talking to a friend in Cleveland that says, oh, your restaurants are open? Oh, ours have been closed for a long time. They've already decided to shut down. So they're not just banning 100 people or more, which the CDC has now updated that to recommending 50 people or more a ban. They're just saying you're done.
And we should say that in a lot of these cases, these restaurants are allowed to stay open as far as, you know, takeout orders or delivery orders or something like that, and as just a small way to try to maintain their business.
But that's just, you know, think of the financial crisis
I know.
This is creating, because these are hourly workers, and so what do? These restaurants have enough money to pay them day after day after day. I mean, I think this is another crisis that we are going to face, and facing now is the financial crisis. Not only the stock market, but I'm just talking about daily workers, people whose jobs depend on being at that restaurant, depend on being
the backbone of our economy.
A lot of people. And I don't know how we're handling that. I know that a lot of in the sports world, a lot of those, you know, the Hornets have done it. Obviously, New Orleans did, where the players have stepped in. The owners said, we're going to pay those hourly workers, but there's not a big brother out there with an endless supply of money that's going to pay off these people, and the ones that have to stay home from work. We got this. You guys probably said the email from a lady who said, I have to stay home with my kids. My boss said I'll lose my job if I don't go to work. It's things like that. It's tragic.
Yeah.
That's the part that's really scary in this whole situation.
Right. It's trying to wrap your head around how long can we go on like this before our economy and the people of this country don't have anything. Like, okay, I get that's great that Duke Energy isn't going to disconnect your bill, but it's still going to rack up. You're going to have to pay for it at some point. And, you know, in addition to just that service not being turned off, how are you going to feed your family? And so it's scary to think about.
Yeah, I was going to say, with the news that North Carolina and South Carolina both closed schools for the next 2 weeks, I think the next step after that was like, oh, wow. You've got a lot of parents who are then faced with tremendous trouble as far as what to do with their kids. We also forget, and Larry, this is, I know, an issue that you're passionate about. We forget about the homeless population in our local schools.
Oh my gosh.
That are impacted by this. And the school is the most routine, regular thing in their life.
In their life, right. And these are the working poor. Their kids go to that school to get 2 really good meals a day. So what happens? I mean, there are 5,000, at minimum of 5,000 homeless children in this community. Not much less the rest of the area. And I just think this is a domino effect, how it's just going to be one thing after another, that we just need to, you know, our city leaders, all of us need to kind of come together and make a decision. What can we do to help those who need it most right now?
I have been seeing people on social media kind of sharing, okay, this is what my strength is, or this is what I'm able to offer for me personally to do my part. And so everyone can kind of be letting that marinate, maybe, you know, even if it's just helping your neighbors or your neighborhood or whatever. I did see my sister shared a post on Facebook of the Chick-fil-A that's in my hometown, and they're offering food to any kid that normally depends on their school to give them the meal. So I was tagging Billie Jean, asking if maybe there are other drive-thrus or places that are doing the same for around here.
I mean, think about it. It was a week and a half ago when not just the president, but a lot of folks, I mean, probably myself included, we were pretty big on ourselves because the economy was doing so well. Yes. And you look at your 401k and you're like, yes! And you're feeling good about yourself and you're feeling good about life and the economy. And it's amazing how much can change in a week and a half. And then you start to talk about these people in these service industries who don't have a lot of savings. Right. We cannot forget about them at this point now. Right. We talk about what an amazing economy it was for the last 10, 12 years, the longest term of economic expansion in the country's history. And now also that comes to a screeching halt. And we can't forget the people who are most impacted by it.
Well, hopefully we'll see the benefit of having that strong economy before getting to something like this, planning for I mean, things like this are inevitable. Yeah. You don't think maybe it's going to happen in your term or, while you're in a place, but.
Well, I mean, the inevitability of this is out of the norm. In the modern day era, anyone, you would have to really literally sit down and talk to someone who's probably 90 years or older to find out how bad things can be, because if you're talking to someone who's about 90 to 95, they were little kids when the Depression hit, 1928, 29, the stock market crash, and then they went through World War II. We've never seen anything of this magnitude in our lifetimes, most of the people who are watching this today. We've never seen anything like it. There's never been any comparison to it. We've never been burdened the way we're going to be burdened now.
It's funny because I think after 9/11, I think it was Dick Cheney who coined the term new normal. And it was a new normal after 9/11 as far as, how we went about our lives, as far as security at airports and things like that. It certainly was. I feel like that is even more relevant now after this, because we really are on this Monday morning, I think everybody's settling into their new normal. And for different people, it's different things. But whether you're a parent and you don't know what to do with your kids all day, or you're a news anchor sitting in a studio 6 feet away from someone else, I think we're in for a long haul here of a new normal that we were not anticipating, I don't think.
I'm reading through some of your comments here, so thanks for joining the conversation. And feel free to drop any questions that you might have. If we can help you, we definitely will. Let's see here. Judy was saying she's worried about the hairstylists, barbers, food industry employees that are going to suffer the most economically, hourly wage people. Sure. Do want to point out, kind of a good idea from Lynn. She said, if you know any mother who is a stay-at-home mom, maybe reach out to them if you're needing some assistance with your kids, because maybe you have to go to work yourself. So she's saying that she was considering that. She has a friend.
The awkward thing about that is
what?
You introduce a person who.
I think,
That's the tough thing about that situation.
I was reading about social distancing and quarantine and being quarantined and everything, how to do that appropriately, like you just said, introducing people. And I think you have to keep the same people in your circle and don't eliminate them and put them in another group or bringing them in. So if you were to do that, maybe making that the same through your extended period of time.
It's it's not insurmountable, because we are a great country and we have great leaders and we have great people who come together in times of crisis. But I think what it does, we all gather in and go, okay, what can we do? We'll figure it out. It's going to take some time exactly what to do. But these problems we've never faced before. We can't compare it to anything else. And it's a learning process right now. I mean, the medical profession is still learning about it. It's such an unknown.
That's the tough thing.
Yeah.
Again, if you look at the situation in Italy, I mean, they just tried to have a lockdown of the northern part of the country. That was like a week ago, and they realized that was enough. Right. And then when you see the numbers from over the weekend, it's once you realize it's so, and I guess this is the nature of a pandemic like this. Yeah. By the time you realize it, it's too late. And I think that's what we're all sort of going through right now. And there are experts and scientists who warned us about this. And who saw this coming, because they know how these things work. But especially when you don't show any symptoms until 4 or 5, up to 14 days later, it makes it really tough.
Yeah. Christy thinks that we need to just shut everything down to get to, the point of ending it altogether. Was it in Spain they were flying the drones to ensure their lockdown?
Yeah, messages are being sent by drones to go inside.
Yeah, I saw we had hundreds of comments when we put up our poll this morning, and people were just saying because everybody was socializing this weekend, we need to close them because they're not really following the protocols.
I hope I'm wrong, but when I saw all those photos this weekend on social media, I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. Granted, I went out, I didn't go certainly to any bars or anything like that, but I mean, I went to the gym yesterday. I literally got hand sanitizer a dozen times in my 40 minutes at the gym.
Well, I was gonna say.
I was like so adamant about it. But I did it just because I thought it would make me feel better after being cooped up in the house all day. All weekend. But the people who are out in these large groups, in bars and stuff like that for the St. Patty's Day weekend, I was like, oh gosh.
Well, what do you think about the gym moving forward though? Because I know you said you were contemplating, because it is literally your sweat.
Oh,
if you have, if you're contaminated, or any other person that has, been around and you miss a spot on that machine, even if you clean up beforehand and you touch that and you happen to touch your face, that is like instant.
So, I think that's, and you're hearing about, gyms across the country that are either shutting down or severely limiting. I know Barry's has
cut it in half.
So I think it's, I clearly don't know the right answer.
Right.
Do you think the gyms want to stay open because they have hourly workers?
Yeah.
It's like we shut down and that they can't afford to pay these people.
I know.
Like you're saying about barbers and beauticians and restaurant workers, and it goes on and on. I was thinking that the one kind of work, hopefully this can continue, where it's a little better are people who work outdoors.
Yep.
On the highways. They are naturally separated, so maybe that can continue. At least that type of work can continue, construction work, hopefully.
Donna is asking, what do people do if they can't buy enough food for their family for 14 plus days?
Well,
Go to a local food bank?
Here's what you do, and I have to reach, the people at Loaves and Fishes who we do a lot of work with. They're one of the agencies. They're a food, what they do is they're like they're pantry.
Food insecure.
There's about 20 pantries locally in which they do, you go in and shop, but now what they're going to do is deliver. But Loaves and Fishes will provide a week's worth of food. And that's why probably right now, if we think about it, Loaves and Fishes is going to need more food than ever. So the people that hoarded all this food, maybe we can all reach out and give to them. Loaves and Fishes, you can contact them. Loaves and Fishes, just Google that.
Yeah.
But that's an idea. So many people are going to be without food that all of us who have the means should reach out in every way we can.
Yeah.
That's what we can do.
Let's see a couple other questions here. Melissa was saying, ask your 80 and 90-year-olds. They can tell you about the Spanish flu that their parents told them stories about.
The Spanish flu was 1918, and it was, that was 500,000 people in the United States died in that outbreak in 1918 during World War I.
Yeah.
And there were like 300 or 400 million people around the world that lost their lives in the Spanish flu. So that was that many years ago.
And by the way, the estimates that I saw over the weekend guess that in Germany about 70% of the population will end up getting it. And it's gone back and forth as far as I saw some Harvard numbers that estimated 60% of Americans. I saw the most recent thing, 50% of Americans. So this is eventually going to get a lot of people. Right. Symptoms will be different, and hopefully,
I think it's 80% will just get
80% will be mild, and that's the good news. But we're, I think, still at the very beginning of this thing.
Yeah. All right, well, we will continue to get through it together as we promised to give you guys the latest facts, and just not to panic. We will keep you posted. And
keep your social distance.
Yeah, stay away then. Bye, everybody.